Ready for a deep dive. Today, we're tackling Alexander the Great. We all know about the whole conquering thing, but what about the man behind the legend?
It's funny, people get caught up in the size of his empire. But it's the small things about Alexander that get me.
Right, like take his education.
Oh, absolutely.
His Wikipedia page mentions he was tutored by Aristotle. Aristotle.
Talk about an influential teacher.
Can you imagine? And his dad, Philip, was serious about it, like really serious.
He was. The Wikipedia excerpt even says Philip rebuilt Aristotle's hometown as part of the deal.
Wow, that's dedication.
It really shows how much emphasis they put on learning. This wasn't just, okay, learn your ABCs. It was about shaping a future leader.
Totally. You don't just rebuild a whole town for everyday lessons. So it's clear that Alexander's education was about more than just, facts and dates.
Exactly. Think about the philosophy, the strategy.
Analytical thinking skills.
All those things that make a great leader. And he wasn't alone, by the way.
Oh, right. He was schooled with other noble kids.
Future generals, politicians, imagine those classroom debates.
Oh, man. I can only imagine the kind of competitive atmosphere. Probably fueled his ambition, don't you think?
For sure. And speaking of ambition, even before he officially became king.
He was already getting his hands dirty.
Big time.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia talks about his time as regent, while his father Philip was off campaigning.
Right, when he was like a stand-in king. It says he faced some major challenges during that time.
He did. He put down revolts, even saved Philip's life at one point.
Wow. No pressure, right. So not just book smarts, but real-world experience, too.
Exactly. This was a crucial period for him. It showed he could handle pressure, make tough calls.
And that leads us, of course, to his conquests.
Which we'll get to after a quick break.
Okay, so we've talked about Alexander's education, his early experiences with leadership.
And now we're ready for the big leagues, right? The conquests.
Exactly. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of battles and empires, the Wikipedia excerpt mentions something that I think perfectly captures Alexander's approach to, well, everything.
Are you talking about?
The Gordian knot.
Ah, yes. A classic Alexander moment.
For those who haven't heard the story, it's about this incredibly complex knot tied to an ox cart.
Legend had it that whoever could untie it was destined to rule Asia.
Talk about high stakes.
Oh.
So what does Alexander do?
Well, he doesn't mess around. He takes out his sword and slices right through the knot.
No way! He just cut it.
Yep. No time for intricate solutions. He saw a problem and took decisive action.
It's such a great metaphor for his whole leadership style.
Totally. Unconventional, bold, effective. He wasn't afraid to break the mold.
It makes me wonder what went through people's minds when they saw that.
I know, right? Did he really just do that? But that's Alexander for you.
Boldness seems to be a recurring theme here. But even with all his ambition and achievements...
There's another side to the story.
Exactly. The Wikipedia excerpt also touches on some less flattering aspects of his personality.
As his power grew.
Yeah. It seems like maybe the line between confidence and, well, ruthlessness got a little blurry at times.
There's the incident with Clytus the Black, for example.
Oh, right. This was one of Alexander's close friends.
A close friend and someone who'd actually saved his life on the battlefield.
And Alexander.
He killed him during an argument.
Wow. That's intense. What could have led to that kind of violence?
It's a question that has puzzled historians for centuries.
Was it a moment of rage, paranoia, the pressure of leadership getting to him?
It's hard to say for sure. Some argue it was a sign of Alexander's growing belief in his own divine right to rule.
Interesting. So maybe power really does corrupt.
It's definitely something to consider. But we also have to remember the context of the time.
Right. Violence was often a part of life, even among the powerful.
It's a reminder that history is complicated. And the people who made history were complicated too.
Even someone like Alexander, who we often think of as this almost mythical figure.
He was still human, with all the flaws that come with that.
Which brings us to the end of his reign and his lasting impact.
And what a legacy it was.
So Alexander's reign ends, but his impact, that's just getting started.
Right. It's crazy how much influence he had, even though he died relatively young.
It makes you think. What were the lasting ripple effects of all those conquests?
Well, one of the biggest was the start of the Hellenistic period.
Okay, so more than just lines on a map changing, what did that actually look like?
Think about it. Greek culture, like everywhere. Art, language, philosophy, even religion, mixing with the existing cultures of Persia, Egypt, India.
Wow, a real cultural blend.
Totally. New forms of art and architecture popped up, philosophical traditions got all mashed up, even new religions were influenced by this.
That's incredible. And this is all because of Alexander's empire.
It's a direct result, yeah. He kicked off this era of cultural exchange, even if he wasn't around to see it all play out.
Speaking of cultural exchange, what about that massive library in Alexandria?
Ah, you mean the Library of Alexandria?
Yeah, it was like a huge deal, right?
Oh, absolutely. That place was like the Google of the ancient world.
Right. All that knowledge, all those different perspectives in one place.
Exactly. Scholars from all over traveled there, eager to learn from each other.
I bet. It's like the original melting pot of ideas.
Exactly. And that kind of cross-cultural dialogue,
Mhm.
super important. It's how new ideas are born, innovations happen, and we start to better understand the world.
That's so true. And it's something we still see the impact of today.
Oh, 100%. A lot of the advancements that came out of the Hellenistic period, like in philosophy, science, art, they formed the bedrock of Western civilization.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it, and it's not just about the real stuff either. What about all those crazy stories about him? The Alexander romance, right?
Oh, yeah. Talk about a legend. Those stories got around.
It's wild. It's like he was a superhero, battling mythical beasts and conquering far-off lands.
It really took off after his death. People couldn't get enough of it.
So, not just a king, a general, a city builder.
He was a legend. People were drawn to his story, creating art and literature inspired by him.
His life was like something out of a movie, full of ambition, victories, tragedies, mysteries. No wonder we're still talking about him today.
It's what makes studying history so interesting, would you say?
Totally. It reminds us that history isn't just dates in a textbook. It's about people, flawed, complex people who shaped the world.
Alexander's story really drives that home, doesn't it?
It does. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the life and legacy of Alexander the Great.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. From Aristotle to the Gordian knot, from massive empires to cultural revolutions, Alexander's story is packed with intrigue.
And it reminds us that one person really can change the world.
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper into the stories that have shaped our world. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.